cru on premier cru is just unique. And for me, it's amazing to have the ability to vinificate so many different premier cru, grand cru, from Côte de Nuit, Côte de Beaune. It's magic. And you could understand very well the difference come from the soil, the microclimate, and it's huge. And to be some different style, and that it's magic for me. Yeah.
So Bouchard Père et Fils has 130 hectares of an estate,
Yes.
A lot in Premier and Grand Cru, is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. We have 12 hectares of Grand Cru, 74 hectares of Premier Cru, but that it's not so important. The most important is the collection. We have le Montrachet, les Chevaliers Montrachet, les Cortons Charlemagne, les Bonnemar, les Clos Vougeot, les Chambertin, les vignes de l'Enfant Jésus, les Volnay-Cailleret, les Genevrières, les Perrières. It's certainly all his name is the most beautiful wine from Côte d'Or, and to see the difference between each terroir it's huge, and it's unique because a normal size in Burgundy it's 8 hectares for a family, but Bouchard it's 130 hectares. And that it's unique, and it's all in is our property, and that it's just unique.
And so yeah, I'm sure you have a team that is working with you to manage all of those vineyards and in the cellar. Yeah. So how many people do you work with?
We have a large team in the vineyard. The most important is in the vineyard with 40 people in the vineyard. And 15 people in the winery, and but after that we employed also some people to help us during the green period, today to the harvest, and also during the harvest. And during the harvest, for example, we employed 200 people to pick the grapes and to help us, and 80 people for the winery to select the grapes and to help the team for the vinification.
And I believe some of the tâcherons, the people working in the vineyards, are spending pretty much their life taking care of like the same plots, the same parcels. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. During all his life, le tâcheron, le vigneron tâcheron, will work only the same place. We select with him a specific place, a specific plot. For example, for un tâcheron for la vigne de l'Enfant Jésus, another for le Clos de la Mousse, another for the Montrachet. And these guys will work all his life just this plot, and his knowledge it's great because he know each vine par vine. He has the knowledge when he prune it, when for the green period, and he know each square meter, and so it's very interesting for us.
I'm sure it comes handy when they have to deal with specific weather conditions, climate conditions. So I would suggest we jump in the 2019 vintage. Can you tell us what were the growing conditions and what were your biggest challenges and how you overcame them?
19 was a very great vintage for us in Burgundy. Firstly, the main fact was for me, it was the winter was not cold, but more hot, but very dry. The main fact is the dryness during the winter, and we do not have the rain during the winter, and that explains a lot of things after. And the spring arrived more sooner than usual. And finally, 19 was a hot year, a little less than 18, but it was very dry. But the condition during the flowering period was important. It was not so hot. We had just some rain during the flowering period. The flowering period appeared the 4 to the 10 June. And unfortunately, there is some coulure, flowering absorption, and we lost a part of the yield. That explains why 19 was there is a few quantity for this vintage. After that, the spring and the rest of the spring and the summer was very hot, very dry. And that's permit to reach very high maturity with a perfect condition, with no problem with mildew or oidium. It all was very good. The grape was so beautiful.
And there was a lot of there was a lack of water resulting from the heat wave, right?
No, there is some period with hydric stress, but it was not so stressful as the 20 vintage. 19 was no, it was good, and but the main fact also it's we observe a lot of milrandage. And the milrandage, it's come from because we have a cold period during April, and after that, the wet period during the flowering period. And that's why there is so much milrandage for the Pinot Noir, but more for the Chardonnay.
So I have a picture to show our audience actually what does the milrandage looks like, which is really like a very
milrandage is a very few small berry, but it's very interesting for the quality because with the milrandage you have a concentration of acidity and sucrosity, and also with aromatic, very interesting aromatic taste. And alors 19, finally, it was a very hot vintage, but the balance of the wine, it's incredible. And you have a high maturity with a high alcohol level between 13.5 to 14.5 natural degree, but also with high acidity, come from the milrandage, and the balance is very, very beautiful. And if we speak about the red wine, for me, 19, it's between 15 and 17. You have the beautiful color of 15 with a very dense wine. It's a very round tannin, very unapproachable vintage. And also the aromatic and the silky tannin of 17. And for me, it's honestly, I think 19 for the red wine in Burgundy, it's one of the greatest vintage since a very long time. When I taste the wine on the barrel, I have the same emotions as we open a very old bottle from the cellar, and you remember me the 1949 for the red wine. And I think 19 will be one of the greatest vintage we had the last 20 years.
So another fantastic vintage aging in 9, I understand.
Yeah. And for the white, it's I think the white was a little more challenging because it was a hotter and a very dry year with concentration. And but after that, we adapt. We pick more earlier to keep the freshness and the acidity. And after we adapt the vinification. And finally, the white, I'm very confident today because it's, I think the style, it's very close to 15. It's a round, rich, it's a true Burgundy wine with a very appealing, with a lot of taste, but like in 15, but with more acidity. It's not 14, but you have the crispy and the zest of the 14 in the mouth.
So can you tell us also, I mean, the maturing and the aging time, our audience obviously realizes that we're releasing our vintage 2019 later. You actually usually come in the market in the United States in March to present the new wines, but this time, of course, you couldn't come, but we are releasing later. Can you tell us about the aging and why?
Yeah, but for me, the 19 was so beautiful, and I think it was important to take time, and I would like to have a little more longer aging in barrel, and to rack at the last moment. And globally, the red wine I racking first for the first time the red wine between February to March, and I bottled it. I finished the bottling for the red wine in May. The beginning of May, And for the white, as I said, it was a little more challenging, and specific for this vintage, it need more time, because at the beginning, the white was very opulent, rich, a little more bigger for me. And during the maturation, during the élevage in barrel, after July, the wine changed a little. It became more focused, the acidity increased, the taste, the terroir increased also, the definition was better. And I think this vintage need more time. That's why I decided to racking the white only after February and March. And we're working with a lot of lees. We take time in tank to settle the lees. And no, I not finished to the bottling the white. Les Grands Crus, for example, le Montrachet, les Corton Charlemagne, la Cabotte continue to aging in a big foudre, big barrel.
Good. Okay. So what Frédéric is not, sorry, I have a question. So what would be the average? I know we can, in production, we've been talking about how small the vintage has been, obviously varies terroir by terroir, but how much would you say in general is off in terms of production?
For the yield, for the red wine, it's between 25 to 28 hectoliter per hectare, and for the white, it's the same thing. In fact, it was not for the Chardonnay, the stress was come from the flavoring absorption during the Lafleur. And for the red, it's because just during the vendange, there is a lot of north wind, and in this time there is no water on the ground, and there is a concentration on the berries. That's why globally the yield is low. But
what would be
also that helps us for the concentration.
So in terms of percentage, what would be the cut, or what would be the regular hectoliter per hectare?
Normally, it's more close to 40, 45 hectoliter per hectare.
So we would be, did you say 50%? No, not quite 50%, but like maybe 30 to 40% down. Okay. Well, so 2019, a fantastic, excellent years. Frédéric is certainly like too modest and too humble to tell you how talented he is. So I will, and I also want to point out we have some of the William Kelly from the Wine Advocates. Frédéric has once again excelled himself in 2019, and you mentioned how you've been wanting to push the precision and the elegance and the finesse of the wines, and it's good to see it acknowledged. He writes as well. So Wine Advocate William Kelly, this is another terrific vintage at Bouchard Père & Fils. Halen Meadows from Burgund Hound listed Bouchard as one of the magnificent 7 Côte de Bonne domain for the year, and certainly an estate to watch. So we could, as mentioned by Frédéric, we have quite a collection, a remarkable collection, but we had to pick the favorite children to give you a sense of the vintage. So we've selected 6 wines. Each of them has a very special meaning to the house. And I'm very excited to start with the Bonne Premier Cru Clos de la Mousse, which is iconic for the house because this is a monopole and it's not, thank you, Frédéric. It's a monopole since 1872, and it took the Bouchard family over 30 years to like assemble that monopole, buying and purchasing parcel by parcel. And it's a lesser known wine. So I want you to take us through. I have a little picture to show. It's Clos, as I'm sure most of you know, is a walled vineyard in Burgundy, and you can see here, an example of the walled vineyard. So Frédéric, what can you tell us about the Clos de la Mousse? What kind of terroir it is, and what is the 19 looking like?
Alors, le Clos de la Mousse, for me, it's one of my favorite terroirs in the Bouchard estate. And in fact, it's a very old terroir. We know the Clos de la Mousse since the 12th century. It's unique. You have 800 years of history of vine growing just in this place with his own name, Clos de la Mousse. The names come from a Latin name, Monticellus. It's like high terraces. And the soil, it's very different of the other Beaune Premier Cru because it's rich in clay, very dense clay, with a 2 meter of profundeus. And it's important because it's a cold place, and the vineyard here never suffer of the drought, and mainly with the global warming, and that's permit to reach a high maturity without hydric stress. And every year with the Clos de la Mousse, you have a very beautiful texture, a beautiful fruit, and I love his wine because. The nose, it's fresh, and you have the raspberry and the blueberry. It's a very round tannin. It's a really an appealing wine with a lot of pleasure today and you could keep it during a very long period. The aging potential, it's great. But I think it's more, yes, truly a pleasure wine. And the quality of the tannin is very beautiful.
I believe that the Clos de la Mousse is the first parcel that you started to farm as with organic practices.
Yes, but globally in the history of Bouchard, it's important, the Clos de la Mousse, because during the 19th century, just after the phylloxera crisis, the Bouchard started to replant. And we tried the first les greffés in the Clos de la Mousse, and we continue to try different method with the Clos de la Mousse because we have a 4 hectares and there is a stone wall all around, and we could try different method. We could try to, and we start with the organic method 10 years ago. And now we continue to practice this method. We increase in all the estate, and the last years we use on 50 hectares organic method, and we decided to use it for all the estate, and with a certification for 2024.
So the 130 hectares of Bouchard Père et Fils will be certified organic with the vintage 2023, right?
2024.
The vintage 2020.
Yeah.
2024. Wow.
We will see. Great. It's not the most important for us. It's not to have the certification. The most important it's the philosophy. The philosophy. We are a vine grower, and we depend of the Mother Nature, and it's important for us to protect environment, nature, and also we have the we would like to transmit a beautiful vineyard for the next generation. The story of Bouchard, it's 300 years, and the Henriot family wants to transmit a beautiful vineyard for the future. That was the most important for us.
And so organic farming and environmentally friendly conscious
yes.
practices is the key. So can we move on to the next Beaune Premier Cru? Although Premier Cru, he would certainly deserve, probably a Grand Cru appellation. That one is Bouchard is very famous for. Using the bottle, I want to show you the beautiful terroir, which is, so it's not technically a monopole, Bouchard, Bonne Grève, Vigne de l'Enfant Jésus, because it's within the appellation Bonne Grève. But the Vigne de l'Enfant Jésus is a climat, is a designation that's solely the property of Bouchard, right?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, the appellation is Beaune-Grève. In Beaune-Grève, you have 32 hectares in totally, but La Vigne de l'Enfant Jésus, it's only 4 hectares in the middle of the Beaune-Grève, just in the middle of the slope. It's the best place of the appellation. And a lot of people, journalists or English people, said it's the filet mignon of the Beaune-Grève. Because it's a very perfect location at the middle of the slope, and the soil it's more gravelly soil. It's easy to cultivate the soil, and mainly after a rain. It's a sunny place. The maturity arrive more earlier in this place, and that's permit to reach very high maturity. But for me, the most important for the Vigne de l'Enfant Jésus, you have the story, but also you have the definition of the wine. And the definition, for me, it's just unique. And when you vinificate La Vigne de l'Enfant Jésus, we try to reach a specific nose, and a nose of violet, with fresh leather. And also a very specific texture of tannin. It's very silky, very round, and in the mouth, it's a very long wine with a very high potential for aging. We had some bottle of the 19th century in the cellar, and we taste some very old wine of the baby Jesus, and it's just incredible, because if you taste a new wine or a very old, after some minutes, you recognize the style of the baby Jesus. It's just unique.
Question about the whole clusters. I mean, how much did you use in 2019 in general? I believe that it was a higher proportion. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, because we adapt the style of the vinification for 19, because the maturity was there, the crop was very low, and when I tasted the berry in the vineyard just before the harvest, the skin was very thick with a beautiful quality of tannin, a lot of color, but also the seed was very brown, with a beautiful quality of tannin, with some note of coffee and mocha. It was great. There is some dried berries, but we select it, we eliminate that because it's important for us to express the terroir, to express also the freshness. I want to avoid over maturity. But for this vintage, we increase also the percentage of a whole cluster. For the Côte de Beaune, it's between 25 to 40%. On Côte de Nuit, it's more 50%. And that's permit to recover some more freshness, with more floral and delicacy. And also to have a long maceration. And during the 12, 15 days, but during all the maceration, we never use a racking over. We do not punch the cap, just an effusion. It's a very delicate extraction to express this vintage.
So that's in general also the limited racking and basically yes. No punching the cap. Exactly. That was the rule for the year.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. How about we move on to the next wine, which has another very special meaning for the house, because so it's Volnay-les-Cailleraie, also known as Ancienne Cuvée Carnot, purchased yes. by the Bouchard family in 1775, as you mentioned earlier. And it's very important because this marked the beginning of Bouchard Père et Fils as an estate that made the house the beginning of made them a vine grower. So how was 2019 for Volnay-les-Cailleraie?
Alors, Volnay, it's a very important place for the Bouchard family, because we have a lot of different terroirs in Volnay, with les Volnay, les Clos des Chênes, les Volnay, les Frémiers, les Pitures, les Chevrets, les Volnay, les Taille-Pieds. But les Volnay-les-Cailleraie, it's the hearth of the Bouchard estate. It's the first plot that the Bouchard family purchased in 1775. And in totally, we have 3 hectares, 0.7. And it's a very beautiful place, just in the middle of the slope. On Les Cailleraie, the name means les chailles. And les chailles in French, it's a soil rich in limestone, a lot of white stone and rocky soil. It's poor, that's why the yield is naturally low. And it's a very beautiful place. You have just 40, 60 centimeter of red clay, and after it's a bedrock of limestone, very hard. And you just be careful of the over maturity. That's why I spend a lot of time in this place. Every day I go in Les Volnay-les Cailleraie to see the evolution and to choose the good date for the harvest. And generally, we started the harvest on the estate Bouchard with Les Volnay-les Cailleraie because it's a very sunny place. And in 19, I started the 11th September. And Les Cailleraie, the wine is it's also unique because it's certainly the most delicate, the most soft tannin from the Volnay area. And in Volnay, you said if you don't have a Volnay-les Cailleraie, you don't know what is a Volnay, because the definition is just unique.
Cool. Thank you. It's my mouth watering, I have to say, wine watering. The next wine is we're going to the Grand Cru. We're staying in the Côte de Beaune. As mentioned by Frédéric, the house has a collection of wines and parcels in the Côte de Nuit as well. But Le Corton is so special. This is the Grand Cru in Beaune. And Bouchard has a very strong position. I have a little map I want to share for Frédéric to let us know what the specificity of this popular Premier Cru is. A Grand Cru, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yes, Le Corton on the area for Bouchard, we have in totally a little less than 4 hectares. But the most important is the situation on the hillock. And as you can see, it's east facing. That is very important. And we are at the top of the hillock. It's 280 meters of altitude. And that is very important. And just in this place, the soil is really different because you have 50, 80 centimeters of red clay, very rich in iron, and that gives the powerful of the wine for Le Corton. But after that, it's a bedrock of rocky soil, la pierre de Corton. It's very difficult for the vineyard, for the vine to grow in this place. But it's unique. Only in this place you have this proportion of limestone, and that gives a lot of elegance. Because classically, people say the red wine from Corton area, it's a very massive and masculine wine, but not in this place because of the proportion of limestone. And generally, Le Corton Bouchard, it's more elegant. I love the nose of Le Corton. I increase year after year the proportion of whole cluster, and I think honestly 19 of Corton, it's my best Corton I ever made. I love the nose. It's between the roses and peony. It's a very beautiful blueberry and strawberry note, and it's very round in the mouth, and the longer it's just great. I love this wine.
How much time do you, I know it's always a difficult question, how much time would you give it? What's the aging potential?
19, honestly, I think it's very great vintage, and you could it's a great vintage. You could take pleasure now immediately, or if you have the good cellar, you could wait minimum for a Corton, it's 10 years. It's great. But after that, I'm sure on Bouchard also we do not release for the market all the production. We keep a large part because we know 19 it's a great vintage for the future. And as you know, it's a tradition for us. We keep a part of the production for the collection, for the cellar, and we will age in the to the chateau, and for the future, for the next generation.
Nice, fantastic. So we're going to stay with the Côte de Beaune, but we'll go to whites, and I'm very excited to be talking about the next wine, which is one of my favorites in the Bouchard portfolio. It's what I call the twin monopole, the monopole twin. This is the other monopole of Bouchard, which is remarkable to have two. And it's the Beaune Premier Cru de Clos Saint-Landry. I want to, before let you talk about it, I want to share the map and show you like right away how very special that wine is, because that's that one parcel of Chardonnay in an ocean, or at least in a very big Pinot Noir territory. So how come there is Chardonnay there, and what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, alors le Clos Saint-Landry, in fact, it's the first trace of white varieties. It's in Beaune. It's come from the Clos Saint-Landry, and we know with the archive from between the 13th century, the Clos Saint-Landry was always planted with white with the Chardonnay, and it was planted by the Cistercian monk, and certainly his name was Thiers Landry. It was the Cistercian monk who cultivated this plot. That's why he put his name. And the Clos Saint-Landry, if you analyze the soil, it's unique because it's white marl and yellow marl, and all around it's more red clay. On red clay, it's better for Pinot Noir, but on white and yellow marl, it's better for the Chardonnay. And the Cistercian monk have the ability, the knowledge to choose the good place for Chardonnay or Pinot Noir. And le Saint-Landry, alors it's a flat land, rich in marl, and it's a sunny place also. The maturity arrive early, and that's why generally I started the harvest in Clos Saint-Landry in Beaune to keep the freshness and the acidity. And after that, the specificity of le Clos Saint-Landry, it's for me, it's the dry fruit, apricot, sometimes a specific nose of exotic note with has the l'ananas and pineapple. Yes, thank you. And also it's round. Beaune in general, it's generous. It's a little more generous than Chassagne or Puligny, but with a very beautiful delicacy and acidity in the finish. On 19 was a little more challenging to have the good balance. That's why we started the harvest with the white to keep the acidity, and also we adapt the style of the vinification with a very short fermentation in tank with a cold temperature, 16, 17 degrees maximum. And after, just at the end of alcoholic fermentation, when I was sure the alcoholic fermentation was finished, we're working with a lot of lees, and we put it in barrel during almost 16, 18 months.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, tour of Clos Saint-Landry. And so I'm moving on to the next and last stop. In Bouchard, we travel, from the Côte de Beaune in the back to Meursault Genévrières. So before talking about specifically about this Premier Cru, I just want to take a moment to share that after taking over the torch from the Bouchard family in 1995, the Henriot also went to Meursault, and there was an opportunity with the estate Hôpitaux-Mignon, which allowed Bouchard Père et Fils to extend their collection of Meursault. I mean, Genevrières was actually the first Meursault purchased by the family and then extended after the Henriot took over. The long story short, in my point is Bouchard has a very strong position in Meursault that we don't always communicate or is recognized. I mean, 20 hectares, which is about over like 50 acres. We have 6 premiers crus and villages. I mean, the Meursault domain and the Meursault-les-Clous, of course. And it was difficult to pick one, but Genevrières, again, is the first one that was purchased by the family. So how was 19 for this specific bottle?
Pour le terroir des Meursault Genevrières, we are lucky because, in fact, it's 2 plots. The first plot, it's in the hearth of the Meursault Genevrières du Dessus. It's a steep slope. The soil is very brown, rich, and in this part, the wine is very large, generous. It's a true Genevrière with a lot of. It's more opulent, more rich, and we are lucky because we have also a upper part. For 1 hectare, it's more high in altitude. The soil is very different. It's more it's a white stone, and it gives more acidity, more freshness. And we pick a little more later because the maturity arrives more later in this place. And after aging in barrel, we blend together to have the cuvée Meursault Genevrières. And that's permit to us to have a very well-balanced Meursault Genevrières, not too rich, but with more freshness, more delicacy and acidity in the finish. And I think for the 19, it will be a very, very beautiful Meursault Genevrières because it's really appealing. The nose, it's great. It's an exposure of dried fruit and nutty note and almond. And after that, you have in the mouth, you have the citrus and the zest of the citrus in the finish with a creamy sensation. It's a very beautiful Genevrière in 19.
We're getting at time, so I want to thank you, Frédéric, and for taking the time to walk us through 2019. I want to open up, take a few minutes just to see questions. So feel free to send your questions. I already have a couple, but before we get there, I just want to point out that we have that digital booklet where you can find like all of the wines that we have not necessarily had the time to go through, see the reviews and the vintage report and etc. And reach out to our team or your contact for availability, which is again limited, and pricing. Do not hesitate to follow on social media. The team at Bouchard and at Fèvre as well puts regular updates on the conditions, the growing conditions during the harvest as well. So join us. I have a very specific question about Le Corton 2015. Somebody has a Jéroboam, so it's 3 liter, and he's asking when would be the best time to drink it? Is it in his lifetime?
The best time it's to invite me in US and I will drink with you.
So right now is good.
Yes. No, 15. I love its vintage. 15. It's very round. It's a very soft tannin with a true expression of the terroir, and no, it's a beautiful, very beautiful vintage. Yes.
So another question about the vintage 17. So that vintage 17 was very lush and approachable upon release. How has the vintage evolved? How is it right now, in your opinion?
I think it's continued to evolve very well, and personally, I drink a lot of 17 because for me it's a perfect vintage to take an immediate pleasure today.
And how about 18? Is it? My understanding is that it's a vintage that is to put aside and keep a few years before enjoying. Is that correct?
Yes, 18, it's a very great vintage, but it's more, it's a hot vintage. And for me, 19 is very close of the style of 99, 09, and 18 will be the same profile. And if you take a very great pleasure with 18, you have to keep it for some years. Or if you would like to decant, to open it, because it's a very it's a strong vintage, very concentrate with a lot of matter, and this vintage need a little more time, or decant it.
Okay, good. Okay, good. All right. Hello, Didier. How are you?
Hello, how are you? Good.
I'm good. Look, I mean, I don't know if you see. I mean, can you see where I am this way? Can you tell our audience where I'm standing right now? I drove very quickly. That an hour and a half from Beaune to Chablis, and then so I'm at the foot of Les Clos, right? Where the William Ferme is, which means William Farm.
Yes.
And we have a few animals there. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about that farm?
Yeah, we decided a few years ago to start this farm with a chicken in first 10 years ago, and we continue after that with goat, with monkey.
Monkey?
Yeah.
No.
No, but not monkey. Des ânes. Sorry?
Donkeys, des ânes.
Donkeys, yes.
Yes, donkeys. So I promise we're gonna talk about wine and move on to Chablis, but I'm not sure if I really need to introduce Didier. You know, Didier has been with at the head of William Febvre since 1988. It's over 20 years since the Henriot family took the torch. He has been very instrumental in pioneering organic practices and biodynamic practices in Chablis at a time, you know, early 2000s, where it wasn't that popular. And this farm is part of the biodiversity and the work that Didier and his team has been doing. But I promise we'll talk about wine. Although there are eggs, there are honey, etc., right?
Yes, yes. We started to produce honey 12 years ago, and we have 6 house bees just behind the farm, just behind the house of the animals, and we produce honey, and we sell this honey in our shop.
At the wine shop.
Nice. Yeah.
So Didier, we'll talk about 19 obviously, but you know, 2021 and the last recent, you know, frost has been all over the news. So I wanna ask you, it's burning my lips. I mean, since you started with Febvre, has it been the most challenging year ever?
One of the most challenging for the frost, yes. The last year with frost was 01, with the same level frost was 2001. This year we had 20 nights with frost during 25 days. And during 20 nights, we started our protection. We have some protection like electric wire cable, we spray water, we use candles. We protect 15 hectares in our estate, and principally in the Grand Cru and Premier Cru area. Grand Cru like Les Clos, Côte-Bougreau, Les Preuses, Montée de Tonnerre, Voleran. One of the best plots in our estate. And the temperature was very, very low this year. main inférieur à 8 degrés, moins 8 degrés. 8
so that's minus 8 degrees Celsius, which would be, I'm not sure, 0 degrees
25, 30 Fahrenheit.
No, 35 Fahrenheit is 0, so it's a lot lower. But so sorry to hear. So it looks like it's going to be a short vintage. So how would you compare? I know it's early for 2021. How would you compare 19, 20, 21 in terms of production?
2021 will be certainly very low. Because the frost destroy everywhere the plots, and the production in some place will be 0.
Wow.
And with the protection, we could save one part of the production, certainly 50%, not more. In 19, we had frost too, and the frost destroyed some place, but the production was better compared 21, I think. But the frost is more important now compared 20 years ago, because we have early debudding, early bud break at the end of March every year with a spring with a high temperature, and with early bud break, we can have high frost. And we have for now 6 years, every year, frost. And this year is very impressive. We have 20 nights, and with a lot of burned buds, and the production will be very, very low.
Okay.
It's really a problem now.
Yeah, such a shame.
But not only in Chablis, everywhere in France.
Yeah.
The south of France is the same.
Yes, I understand that it's global. I know even in north of Italy, where they don't deal with frost that much, it's coming as well. Unfortunately, I guess the impact of global of climate change. It's not warming; it's global change.
40, 50 years ago, the frost was in Chablis, but in May, often in May, the middle of May. But the temperature was not very low. You could have some problem with frost, but not a lot, and not with a low temperature. Now, climate change, we have early frost and high frost.
I guess it wasn't the same, obviously, at the time of William Febvre when he took over from his family back in the late 50s, which is actually, taking me to ask you just to give us like a quick overview or reintroduce, William Febvre as an estate and what's the house philosophy.
Febvre family was the oldest family in the wine business in Chablis. They started 250 years ago, and William was the 10th generation. He started after his father in 1959. The estate was 7 hectares big at this time. William was a visionary person, and he understood the potential of Chablis, the potential of the wine of Chablis, and he decided to replant quickly everywhere the best part of Chablis, principally in the Premier Cru and Grand Cru. And during 10, 15 years, he replants, and at the end of the 60s, the estate was 50 hectares big, approximately 150 acres. During 40 years, William owned his estate, and in 98, he decided to stop. He was 70 years old, and he sold his estate to Henriot family. At this time, the estate was 50 hectares big, and when Joseph Henriot purchased the estate, he increased the surface, and he purchased a new plot, 28 hectares of Chablis. And now we own 78 hectares. We are not the biggest estate in Chablis, but the largest producer of Grand Cru and Premier Cru. Yeah.
Fantastic. And as mentioned, you've pioneered organic practices and biodynamic. And I understand that you're looking at getting the certification like for Bouchard in 2024?
2023.
Okay, so I thought 2023. I know it's around there. But we'll get there. It's around the corner, but transitioning takes time. It's a lot of work in the vineyard. So back to the 2019 vintage, where the growing conditions like similar to the one further south in the Côte d'Or, or that was very
approximately the same. It was a dry and hot year. The winter was very dry. 200 millimeters of rain during the winter, compare 500 millimeters in 2018. You can see the difference. A very low rain during the winter. After that, spring and summer was dry. We had early bud breaks with some night frost. The flowering started in June during 2 weeks with some difficulties during flowering and a lot of coulure and mirandage. After that, the summer was dry with no disease, no mildew, no radium. And the first week of September, the north wind, concentrate the food before harvest, concentrate sugar, concentrate acidity, and give a small yield, very small cluster, small grapes.
Small berries?
Small berries and small grapes. The grapes was only 50 grams, compare 200 grams in 18.
Oh, so it was a quarter of what 18 was.
Yeah, very concentrated grapes. And the yield was very low, 20 to 30, 35 hectoliters per hectare. Is 50% less compare a normal year. Very small yield. But perfect grapes, perfect berries, no botrytis. We started harvest 11th of September. And we started with some sunny place like Vaillon, Vaudésir. And we finished with Montmain and Montet-Tonnerre. We taste today, I think, Montet-Tonnerre and Montmain. It's a late maturity terroir.
So I have obviously like the vintage and the house was highly acclaimed as every year. I have Jensen Robinson saying the wines are clearly differentiated by the vineyard origin. So there's very big differences between each wines, but the quality
terroir is identity.
Say that again,
the identity are very precise. The identity of the terroir are very precise.
And you mentioned, Jasper Morris noted that 2019 offers concentration of both sugar and acidity. And as usual, this is a very impressive range of wines. But we selected 4 of them. Premier and Grand Cru. I mean, William Febvre, as you said, is the largest landowner in Premier and Grand Cru with over 30 hectares, about 16 in Premier Cru and 16 in Grand Cru. So let's start with the Premier Cru. We have one from the left bank and one from the right bank. So the Chablis, let me pull up a little map for our audience, starting with the Montmain, which is, I believe, like a very classic expression of, do you see my screen? No, but go ahead. I'm not sure what's going on with the picture, but go ahead. So let's talk about Montmain.
Montmain, yes. We own here 10 acres. We are located on the left bank of the river with a southeast facing. We own 3 different parts in Montmain, 3 subclimates called Buteau, Forêt, and Montmain. It's a late maturity terroir. It's a cold place. We finish the harvest every time here. It's a very stony place with a lot of Kimmeridgian soil, lot of clay, and lot of marl.
So I understand as a result that you should expect and have more freshness and more minerality from a premier cru in Montmain than a premier cru, for instance, on the left bank. And the Montet Tonnerre in
Vaillon, for example, Vaillon is close Montmain, and Vaillon have the same exposure, but Vaillon is a steep slope, and Vaillon is a sunny terroir with early maturity. Montmain is a little bit flat, with the same facing southeast, but with a late maturity because it's a cold place, and the maturity here arrived very late. And the soil is very rich with Kimmeridgian soil, with chalk, and this place gives wine with high minerality, high freshness, and a lot of intensity. We have concentration. The bouquet is very floral with mineral aromas, very fresh, little bit citrus. And the palate is very intense with a great balance, a great salinity and power. It's a very concentrate wine. 19 show for me like 15 and 17. You have the richness of the 15 and the freshness of the 17.
The 17.
It's a vintage with a very good balance, very concentrate. You can appreciate this vintage now, but you have a very good aging potential. The yields are very small. The purity and the freshness are here, and you can keep this wine for a long time, 10, 20 years, no problem. But it's a very pure, very elegant.
So for some reason, I can't pull out the map. So I just put it in the back, so you can see it on my screen. So you have the left bank here, and then we're going to move to the other side of the Sereine River, about where my finger is, which is Montet Tonnerre, which is we can say probably one of the best terroirs of all of the Chablis Premier Cru, because it has some like geological similarities with the Grand Cru. What are those similarities, and how would you describe the wines and how different they are from the Montmain?
We own here 6 acres in 3 places, 3 subclimates called Pied-d'Alou, Chapleau, and Brechin. Pied-d'Alou is on the top of the hill with east facing, and this place gives fresh and mineral wine. The second place called Chapleau have a south facing at the bottom of the hill with deep soil. This place gives rich and large wine. And the third place called Brechin have a west facing. And here we have the oldest plot of the estate from 1936. This place gives very small yield, very concentrate wine, and very fresh wine. We blend in Montet Tonnerre the 3 places. And we have every time with Montet Tonnerre, certainly one of the most mineral wine in Chablis. And for me, Montet Tonnerre is the typical expression of Chablis wine. It's mineral, fresh, with high salinity, mouth, in very elegant wine. It's wine for aging. It's wine for Chablis lovers. very, very mineral.
I've been able to pull like a picture here. You can see one of the parcels actually of the Monte Tonnerre right here.
You have on the nose white flower like acacia, citrus zest, very elegant nose. And the mouth is mineral, chalky, very elegant, very fresh, with a long finish. This wine have, like Montmain, very good aging potential. But the mouth is rich with a power, energy, and organic practice and biodynamic practice increase in our wines the energy and the minerality.
And the definition, I guess, of
the purity,
right?
and when we started organic practice in 2006, acidity was a little bit low, and now with organic practice, acidity increased a little bit in our wines, and energy and the precision is better.
Thank you, Didier. So William Febvre has a total of like 8 premiers crus, but we're going to stop here for today with the premier cru, and we're going to move on to the Grand Cru. So just a reminder for our audience that Grand Cru represents only 1% of the Chablis area, 2%.
2%. Only
it's about 100 hectares.
100, yes. It's 250 acres in total. Is only 2% of the total area. Is very, very small. Chablis in total is 16,000 acres, and the Grand Cru area are only 250 acres. 2%.
2%.
Yeah.
And there are 7 Grand Cru, and William Febvre has lands in 5 of them.
Yes.
Today we selected 2. 2 of the Grand Cru where we have the strongest position, since we own the largest land, which is Les Clos and Bouguereau.
Côte de Bouguereau. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about Bouguereau and then specifically about Côte Bouguereau. So I understand Les Clos is we own about 16% of the appellation with over 10 hectares, acres, sorry. And that's one of the largest and most famous. So what else can you tell us about Les Clos and how was 2019?
Les Clos is certainly one of the most famous Grand Cru in Chablis, the largest, 25 hectares, 75 acres in, 60, 70 hectares in total. The most famous, Les Clos makes certainly the most complex Chablis with, it's a resume of the other. You can see Les Clos here. Yeah. And we own here 4 hectares, 8 different plots, and we are located on the top of the hill. On this place, we have a cool climate compared to the bottom. We can keep a little bit more acidity in the wine. And on the soil, we have a little bit more chemogen soil and shocks. And this place can keep a better minerality and better acidity and better freshness. We have in this wine typical note of nose of Chablis, very fresh, with chalk, with citrus, a little bit mineral reduction.
Can you tell us about the vinification and the use of oak? What was your approach for 19 and in general?
In general, we never use new oak, only natural barrel. Our barrel from Bouchard Père et Fils, after 1, 2, 3 years, I keep the barrels from Bouchard, and I use the barrel here during 8, 10 years. Our philosophy with barrels is only exchange, oxygen. We don't want to have oaky taste in our wines. we want to use oak for exchange. Exchange and oxygen give a better complexity and better expression of minerality. We vinify one part of our wine in barrels, the rest in tank. For the Grand Cru is approximately 40% in barrel during 6-8 months, and the rest in tank. After 6-8 months in barrel, we blend the wine in tank and we continue maturing in tank. We finish the bottling of the 19 in March, after 16-17 months in total maturation.
Is that longer than prior years, or is that similar?
Yeah, it's a little bit longer compared to normal year. Normally, we finish bottling in January. This year, two months more before bottling, because this vintage need a little bit more time because it's a concentrate vintage, and this vintage need a little bit longer maturation in tank. And for the Premier Cru, for example, we use a little bit less oak, only 20 to 30%. But we use oak only for exchange, only neutral barrels.
Only neutral barrels. So we are gonna conclude with the last wine, which is very, very special. I'm just gonna manage to get away to show you that map, which is the last of the Grand Cru, the Bougros Grand Cru. William Febvre owns about almost 50% of the whole appellation. But William Febvre has this very special bottling of a climat Côte Bouguereau, so Bougros Côte Bouguereau. Can you tell us about how long has that wine been made and why and etc.?
Yeah, William Febvre is the largest producer in Bougros. We own 6 hectares on 12, 50% of the area. But in this place, we have 2 different terroirs. One terroir on the plateau is 4 hectares big. It's a flat land with southwest facing with a deep soil. This place make rich and large wine, very approachable, perfect place to discover the Grand Cru area. And the second place, very small, 2 hectares, 6 acres. And this place have a south facing with a very steep slope, 50 degrees. Very, very steep, and we are located close to the river. This place is a sunny terroir with early maturity and high maturity. We started the harvest during the first days here, but this place can keep a very good freshness because during the summer, the river give a fresh night, and we can keep a very good acidity in the fruit. You can see the Côte Bouguereau on the photo. It's a very steep slope.
Yeah, you can see on the Bouguereau is cut by the road in 2 parts, right? Within the higher part is Bouguereau, and you can see the slopes of Bouguereau.
Yeah, and under the tree, we have the river called Le Serein, and the river keeps the freshness during the summer. And we have in the fruit very good acidity level and very good sugar level before harvest. And we make wine with richness, very large mouth, power, but we can keep a very good freshness and very good minerality. And this terroir make wine for aging, very concentrate wine.
Thank you, Didier. That's very, very interesting. I wish I had a glass to share with you, but there's not much wine, so I'll have to come to the estate to taste it. I want to open to questions. I see already one that's a bit specific related to pruning and to timing of when you prune, if this is changing to combat frost.
Yeah, pruning is a very big challenge because traditionally we finish pruning at the end of March. we have a late pruning because when you have a late pruning, you have a late bud break, normally. Last year, 21, bud break was very early, 20 of March, and pruning was not finished. And it was a challenge to finish quick before a bud break. This year, we decided to prune a little bit early compare. We finished pruning 15 and 20 of March. And the first night was 27 of March. Bud break started just before the frost. And it's very difficult with early bud break to have a good timing for pruning. But for the frost, late pruning is very important. But you can't prune all the vineyards in March. You must to start in December, in January.
Yeah.
But we have a big team for that. We have 1 people for 2 hectares. The normality in Chablis is 1 people for 4 hectares.
4 hectares.
Yeah, is normal. In our estate, we have one people for 2 hectares.
I understand organic and biodynamic requires a lot of work, spending more time in the vineyards to.
Yes, and we have a lot of exigence for the green part of the work during May, June, and July. We have a lot of work in vineyards, and 1 people for 2 hectares is not enough. It's very important to have a lot of people for this part of the year.
Good. Well, that's it. I don't think I have any additional questions, Didier, and we are at time actually. Thank you very much for joining from Chablis. And I look forward to seeing you in person and enjoy some of these wines when travel can resume normally. I wish you a good end of day. To our audience, thank you very much for joining as well. We have that digital booklet that allow you to get the more detailed vintage reports, reviews, Didier and Fred bios, and tech sheets for all of the wines. So ask your contact an MDHA or our distributor, and you can find also some information on our website. And last but not least, we recorded this webinar that will be posted on Maison & Domaine Henriot America YouTube channel. And follow us on our social media. And that will be it for today. Thank you very much. À bientôt.
Thank you.
Au revoir.
Bye-bye. Thank you.